Hi, and welcome to the third episode of HansTheGreat on different stakes and networks. So, in this particular case, we're still on the planet Win, on the Hive networks to be precise, and we're going to play NL10. So our main goal, compared now to the last time, is in general to kind of take a look a bit at the difference and kind of like give you an advice if you're like thinking about moving up from NL5 to NL10, what you should generally be looking out for. Typically, I don't like expect too much of a difference. When we're generally talking, it's still like we have a ton of recreational players that just play in general poker for fun, so they're not really going to think about poker on like a very deep level, and there's nothing really wrong about it. So I still think that very likely playing like a very simplistic, actual very easy game is probably going to be the best possible play. Plan is to play pretty loose pre-flop in terms of like I'm going to open raising wider than I would normally do. Especially from late positions. I mean, for example, there's a lot of people who say, why would you do so? Because the rake being high and so on. They kind of like advocate rather a tighter style because the rake being high, but in general, like it's fairly correct. But I don't understand this kind of point, since if you think it about more closely on this take, so often it's out of profit spot that it doesn't really matter the rake, because if it's something out of profit, generally you don't have to ever put in any cent. Even if you flop the nuts, you can check fold the nuts. So that's generally something that's pretty important to realize, and something that I think a lot of people very frequently forget. I mean, I'm talking here about higher playing players that like said that, for example, the 6-month bullshit ranges are a little bit like too wide, too much stealing, especially like from the small blind or like the button where you have like almost 70% range because of the stack and so on, which I think in the big picture is kind of like wrong, because as I said, if you have an outer preflop spot, you can check fold absolutely any board. You don't even have to invest. That's why it is called an out of profit spot. And so the rake doesn't really matter if you have like an out of profit spot, especially like pre-flop. So that's in general very important. So table 2, I think 3D suited is generally not a hand that you kind of really want to normally either raise. So I think limping is absolutely fine in this case, and this is something we could make an argument, being that the rake is in general like high. So for this, because of rake, you're not gonna earn with this hand like very a lot of money in the big picture. So you do kind of do want to think about that in general, but I do believe that I still have overall a very decent edge, and this is like a classical example. I expect very frequently people to be honest and lose limp pots. Nobody invested like any penny here, and so I kind of like take this very frequent 2-3 BB pots down. Also, again, the house takes it's 5%, so yeah, especially like on these kind of like sides where the rake is kind of like on the larger side, on the higher in general, then these kind of plays are a little bit more debatable in like the big picture, because as I said, you are going to pay a very decent amount of rake in general, so it might actually kill your winnings from such play like limping, which is not really a play where you make a lot of money. So yeah, here after he checks twice, I'm definitely gonna take a stab. He calls. Well, I think betting the river is okay. Just if somebody checks behind, I'm generally like betting twice, and this limit works very well for me in the big picture, but obviously this time it did not. Ace Queen, I'm gonna go ahead and make like a value 3-bet against probably a fisher. I mean, probably like not a regular, because he doesn't have his like a broken stack. So you could actually make an argument from going ahead here and making like kind of larger. So Yeah. This is something, of course, I do not like when he's kind of squeezing here. I mean, my hand has really some nuttish potential, but other than that, I think it's really in the big picture, pretty reasonable fold. Here with ace queen, I don't mind c-betting. The reason being my diamond, my club here. So, for example, in this particular spot, I flopped like um, a backdoor flush draw with like 2 over cards, and so I believe that betting is typically going to be very okay. Now on the turn, this is one of the cards that people can generally, alongside with the ace, fear the most, and so it's, in my opinion, a very good spot to bet. And if you would call, well, again, wouldn't be so bad to bluff like a club on the river, maybe. Also, again, if it's not folding an 8x or 9s or something along these lines, then you're like kind of like fucked. But other than that, I think it's very likely going to fold a decent percentage of the time there. Here, ace 8, I'm gonna use a min-raise strategy out of the small blind, because I think it's a really good out of, in general, like works really well. In my experience, what I just made. Think here, you can check call, you can bet. Um, I think betting off pot as a standard, you know, I mean, the standard is to like just bet twice here and then like check fold. Looks pretty reasonable. And this is a pretty bad card on the river. I mean, but I can't fold since there are some busted like 10-9, so I can't really fold. And yeah, on top of that, he's able to turn that into bluffs. So very nice from him, I have to say, and thank him for that. For kind of like doubling me up almost. On the flop, it's got checked through, so I think betting turn is fine. I don't think I need to make it like that. I think half pot is pretty enough in the spot. Ace king, I think this particular spot, calling is fine. And yeah, when you flop the nuts, it's really okay. The ace is typically not a bad card, so I do kind of like here betting just to maybe to get 7, 6, maybe some 5x to fold, in case he has that. I think this is a mandatory raise. I mean, on this kind of stakes, you do kind of want to play really simple. You could call, but a turn raise looks in general um, pretty much stronger than on the flop, especially because when people bet half pot, they some percentage of the time level themselves, since they bet weak, that they kind of induce and so on. So I think raising there and the big picture should be probably the correct play. This is a spot where I might even consider ISO raising, but I have to make it like really large, because I do not like to get I do want to generate as much fold equity as possible, so I do kind of prefer to make like larger size. And now it's always the question, c-bet or not. Well, we are 3-way, so of course now it gets an easy check, and so at this point I think we're just pretty much check folding. Just put the check fold button. Here I could have probably let out the flop, didn't realize where I was at the hand, and here I squeezed, and this guy called the squeeze, and I have to with a squeeze. Now, come on. Yeah, I mean, my play was correct. It's just annoying that I would have crushed aces, but I think the credit's absolutely a correct play by folding there the ace queen. I mean, playing squeeze fold is, in my opinion, probably the correct play. So, um, I'm pretty fine with my line. It's just, of course, kind of like a bit results oriented. Why? But you know, that's how it is, and sometimes we are going to fold. So here I again flop the nuts. I'm generally running pretty hot currently, so can't really complain. squeeze from this guy. I don't really know who he is, so I think folding seems probably best. Also, yeah, it's kind of like questionable, well, because um, other on the higher level, this could be even people squeezing way lighter in that spot because Ricky Leroy is a fish, so Mauritius having position over him, and me having probably a wide button range, it's generally fine to squeeze kind of lighter. But still, Queen 10 is not an argument for like going ahead and calling. Fairly okayish. Pocket 5, I think. Standard min raise on the button. As I said, I'm going to play lose, and this lose I'm going to confirm here by either raising on MP Queen 8 off, which I think is okay in the big picture. Pocket 5s, I think I can call. Since they're three-way, I'm fine with calling. Of course, this is now interesting. How do they react here on the 10-9-10 flush draw board? In general, it's always kind of like the question how to react in this kind of spots. He checks, and you are gonna face here a pretty large. I mean, it's not going to be a super large, but still, I think betting really small and kind of like trying to get value out of his king, ace, queen type of hand, and which in kind of like on the turn goes just gonna go check, and if he bets, it's like it's just not gonna be good. I mean, you're pretty much hoping here that he doesn't have much. I mean, if he's gonna have ace king, he's probably gonna check it down. He should probably not be bluffing with it. I mean, at least I hope so. Instead, he goes ahead and makes like an overbet, which is fairly interesting. What am I supposed to check call here versus an overbet? I mean, okay. I mean, you have me, mate. I think I'm fine how I played. It's just an unlucky turn card where he can actually turn his ace king into a bluff. But other than that, I think it's okay how I played it. So in this hand, king 5 is off. I'm definitely going to open on the cutoff. King 5 suited actually, sorry, which I think is important. I do kind of want to play a lot of these pots because, as I said, I do believe that by me having a higher edge, a bigger edge actually, I can even beat the rake with this kind of like loser opens and so on. So I do rate my skill advantage compared to the average NL10 player pretty high, and so I can affordably kind of like go ahead and actually play this amount of hands. King 10 off, of course, King 10 suited, unluckily a fold is played. And this is a spot where I think you, on this takes, you're very easily gonna go ahead and just c-bet because his range, calling range of the small is typically a pocket pair or like a Broadway, so a Broadway really not gonna fold out. And you have a couple of backdoors, so it's definitely not the end of the world if you kind of like get called. And he pots 3. I don't really know what I'm supposed to call here, but okay, looks good. So 5-6 here on the button is of course going to be a steal, and let's hope we get it through. And as you can see, stealing is really still profitable in the big picture, and even if you're not going to like always kind of like have an out of profit spot, you're very frequently going to be so close that you can just post flop simply just gonna be able to just c-bet the nuts to come up like would be required. Pocket 8s, I think this is a pretty important spot because this is a squeeze. Actually to a point where we do for 30 big blinds don't mind get it in against Hispanico. And and so this is interesting. I think this is a ship because of the dead money. Despite Solitude, they're probably gonna have here a stronger range that I wish he would have. No, he actually went ahead and probably leveled himself. And I think yes, AAA seemed fishy up for now, and he's probably gonna have like a fishy hand. They have packet threes, and he's actually gonna win it. Looks like that. Yeah, he's gonna even hit the set on the river, so good for him. Kind of lost, have to kind of rebuy, but I'm fine with that, and I think it's pretty okayish and the big picture. But as I said, this Solitude's play looks pretty strong. I mean, I'm eyes raising out of the small blind into 3 limpers. So, I mean, I played a lot of hands, but still, it's not like I have there just a random hand. And so when he 3-bets me, it looks pretty strong. But with Ace King, this is how you should generally be making most of your money. So you kind of like block aces and kings, and there's some dead money in the pot, especially once yes AA limps and calls the 3-bet. And at this point, there's like over like I don't know 20, almost 30 big blinds, and you just shove, and pretty much you're most of the time just praying that they're fold, and you're pretty happy to take a 30 BB pot without ever seeing a flop or in general the showdown. But if you do get called, you still generally have some outs, even if you're up against kings. You generally doing fairly well. For example, in that spot, I think I personally would have rather called queens and than ace king in general. So pocket queens here, I'm definitely going to be a 3-bet or a squeeze, depending what Unreal is going to do here. And at this point against the shorty, I mean, he's obviously not a shorty, he's most likely a fish. Since given sizing, doubt that he's the shorty that opens that kind of way. And I mean, he snapped called, which is not a bad thing. The question is, how do we want to play this? I think playing straightforward and betting is fine. I think betting half pot is probably enough in the big picture, because if he has something, he's probably gonna jam himself. And if you do kind of want to leave him room for doing something stupid, because when people kind of like get shorter, they tend to do make generally way more mistakes than when they're kind of like really deep. So because like they care a little bit less about the money, they kind of view themselves anyway, I don't have much behind, so I can like do something fancy in general. That's why I do kind of like betting just half pot, because in turn, on most turn cards, the money's anyway gonna get it then. So I think in the big picture, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. So here I open raised in the cutoff, king 10 suited, and the big blind called me, and I had pretty decent flop. Turn card is not really what I was expecting. I don't really think I will get much to fold. So I do kind of don't hate a check behind, because I could possibly even have some showdown value. So now on the river I have flush, so I'm going to pot it, and he just kind of like snapped it, and I do kind of take it down. So on table 4, I open raised under the gun with Jack 9 off. I think it's MP, and I think it's pretty standard c-bet, although I'm not really expecting too much folds on this kind of texture, because it's a texture where Queen Jack is going to float. A lot of this, like in general, he's like middle-ish suited connectors, 1 gabbers, and gonna hit this fairly good. He raises. I think it's a pretty standard call. I don't think there's a whole lot to do. The queen is of course, the 9 is of course not a very good card, and of course I'm kind of like drawing to a very very bad draw now, and sort of like very easy to read, and that's why I think folding the turn is pretty okayish in the big picture. So as far as I noticed in the last couple of minutes, people started to 3-betting me more in this session. Also compared to the last time, I think I got a little bit like more 3-bets from on NL on NL5, which is, as again, could be possibly a sample size issue. Let's try out how people react to 3-bets, because last time they did not really fold to them. So we do want to kind of find out how they react. So since I do not have time forever, I have to kind of like make a lot of this like plays where are going to be in general pretty marginal and definitely not highly plus EV against an unknown. So that being said, again, I hope it's going to be fine. And for example, this Jack 10 off, I mean, this is like not something that you typically do on 3-bet, but as I said, I do kind of want to get a feeling how people act and think on the stakes in terms of when facing a 3-bet, because the overall perception how these stakes are played, they're pretty nitty when they talk about 3-bets. So that's why I'm going to kind of like try and find out if they're actually that tight as it's supposed to be. On the other hand, I'm also kind of like acting tight, but I also didn't really have a hand that would fit into my calling range. I mean, I don't hate here to bet. It's not like a really dreamy spot, but again, there are probably going to be better aces, but you can continue in some turn cards like this. That's why I do kind of like a bet in the big picture. And now you have a chance to continue. I mean, if he's calling you now, he's most of the time gonna have something. It's not like he never has it. And it's a 4 straight board, so now we're definitely going to bluff at it, and I hope he's going to lay the hand down. So now let's wrap up this video with like a summary of this episode. So the first impression what I got now from these NL10 guys and so on is basically that they do kind of understand a bit more compared to the NL5 players what they're exactly doing. I mean, it's not like it's a huge difference, but they do understand a little bit better the technical aspect of the game. For example, they seem to be folding a little bit more to 3-bets. For whatever reason, but I kind of think it's mostly because somebody told them that on these stakes people kind of like 3-bet more or less actually, and so having like a higher fold to 3-bet isn't actually a huge problem, which is kind of correct. So they kind of implement that, and it seems that to me in general that I did not get a lot of fights back versus my 3-bets. So in general, and I have to be said that we're generally in this half hour, 40 minutes of which I created this video. They were like pretty honest. They did not like made anything crazy. So might be a Hive network tendency, which might be possible. But still, I felt like they were generally pretty solid and straightforward, which I think is in the big picture very okay-ish. So very congrats to that, to those players who I might have faced in the video. The next thing is that I want to point out that I think this higher 3-bets from the blinds is not something that comes out just like on NL5. I think it's a whole procedure where like the micros are kind of like evolving to a stage where people realize that more and more you could actually keep because of people like folding a lot and this in general like image that on micros everybody 3-bets tight. People started like to 3-bet more, and because of that I don't see like a very big difference in terms of like 3-bet compared to NL5. As I said, it's something that poker is evolving, people are adjusting, and so at this point I think more and more people are 3-betting kind of loser on the micros. But all these being said, I still think that because of the higher amount of recreational players that do not know what they're exactly doing, the super most profitable play is the super straightforward play. Now, I wasn't some parts of this video like a little bit my mind going advanced instead of like thinking um, on a super simple level. So my fault possibly, but in the big picture, I don't think it's really a big issue. And um, still, I would say that everything aside from like straightforward play comes second in terms of like making money at the stakes. So there's not much left. I can just announce the next episode, which is going to be the highest micro stakes that I'm going to play, and with which we're going to conclude this series on the Hive network, which is going to be NL25. So that's it for this time. Thanks for watching. This was HansTheGreat for bestpokercoaching.com. Good luck at tables and bye bye.